Mishima gave us a bit of a compromise from what I wanted, and I think a lot of, not like a lot of people, I think there was just a very loud grouping of people that wanted Gajeel to lose to hype up God Serena. I think that I'll talk about it a lot in this video. There's like the weird idea of like the value of hyping up God Serena doesn't really exist because it doesn't really do anything in this arc. But Mishima didn't direct it like that. It went in an entirely different direction for Gajeel's character, and less for like a hype tool to kind of just beef up an enemy and like an enemy faction. It didn't really do that to what I think a lot of people were hoping for, because Gajeel wasn't. It's like Gajeel is strong, but we can't look at it as like, oh, he came in and like when Suzaku came in and ran through Urza and base Natsu. So it's like, yeah, that was a really big thing because it was two people you wouldn't expect the character to be able just to pretty much no diff at that point. Whereas God Serena isn't like just blitzing and running all over Gajeel. It's more of like he just had a counter for everything that he did, and he's just got a lot of variety in his abilities. We even see that this chapter, like Gajeel hits some of the bladed attack, but because of the Diamond Dragon ability, he can turn his body, obviously Dragon Diamond like, and then it goes unscathed. It's just like he's just got so many things in general that combo together that makes him difficult to fight with. And that's the thing about him, as being a Spriggan member, he made the criteria not just power level, but I think the combination of his hacks and the way that he works well, all these different abilities together. But it being set up more for a later fight, and seemingly for maybe some exposition with Goldal and stuff, I think has more potential than I think what a lot of people were kind of aiming for, with like it hypes up an enemy for what? For nothing. Because like we know where God Serena generally is from the last arc. We had a lot of characters to compare him to. We had like people on his level as well as people below and above him. So it gave us a really good understanding of like the general area that this character's in. Because when you really think about it, when you think about like the Wizard Saints, you think about like, people like the Wizard Saints, and then you think that as like the bottom, and then at the top you think of the known people above the other Spriggan 12, and you think everybody between them. It's not a lot of people. Like when you think of the entirety of the Fairy Tail verse, it's not a lot of people. There's been a good chunk of addition in 100 Years Quest because there's been a lot more like important, relevant people from all different areas kind of showing up, and some of them have displayed to be around on that area of the Spriggan. So when we see that, and we see where Gajeel is clearly there in terms of like combat wise, it's just ability wise, he's just getting outclassed. It's something that is cool for his character, but it doesn't put that like, oh yeah, let's just kind of like randomly hype up God Serena to be in this arc. It's like, no, I think that's one of the reasons also he immediately left, because it's like it's not supposed to be that. It gave us a setup potentially with Sai, which I want to talk about, a really interesting potential bit of lore and interaction with Sai, but it gave Gajeel somebody to go after and have an investment in a fight for later. I think that it's because it's one of the reasons I really want to get to Gray versus Scully on another fight, because they had a fight. Gray got caught in something, and unfortunately he pretty much lost that match, and he deserves to have his rematch. And it's one of the reasons why Lucy versus Kyria was such a good fight, because there was a lot of investment. It was somebody that Urza had fought for a little bit, so we knew like strength-wise generally kind of where she was at. And we knew that she had a history with Lucy after meeting her and interacting with her at the beginning of 100 Years Quest. So it had a lot of reasons for, oh yeah, when you want to get to this fight, you want to see her overcome this opponent that showed her a lot of difficulty in the past. And with this, I think it also sets up a really strong, larger hope for me with Gajeel, because with this fight, I thought this would be way more of a focus fight. I didn't think God Serena was going to leave, but I thought it'd be like we get back, we're still getting the fight. Gajeel at the end of the chapter starting to turn things around, and then maybe like halfway through the next chapter he wins, or at the end of the next chapter he wins. But it was done in a way that God Serena just kind of up and bounced, so it gave us an opponent for Gajeel for the future, only while interacting with Gold Owl. So that means obviously Gold Owl is going to be coming in later, and the obvious Viernez connections in some way, shape, or form is their guildmaster Viernez in a human form. Does he know Viernez somehow? Like, that's a big question that people have been having, but it means that interaction in the future, hopefully Gajeel will have, but with Goldell and potentially Viernez, that puts Gajeel in a really good spot for advancements and upgrades and, spotlight, really cool Gajeel moments. Because when you really think about it, what I wanted from this fight, like I said, is I wanted it to be a focused fight. I was hoping for more of like a really cool Gajeel battle now. I'm fine with the setup battle later as long as Mishima does it. Like, as long as we don't have like another Gray versus Scoleon situation where we're just kind of sitting wondering if Mishima's actually going to actually do anything with it. Or is it going to happen? Because it holds a lot of potential. Like, a comeback fight like that would be really cool, especially like if Gajeel can get some kind of upgrades and advancements between now and then. But with Viernez, again, gold dragon, gold metal, iron dragon, there's a lot of value in where that could go for Gajeel. Because the thing with Natsu that we now know in Dragon Force, that his fire is a mixture of different fires that he's consumed. So I wonder if Gajeel ate metal from a dragon, if he achieved Dragon Force, would his metal be a combination of those metals as well? Not the same like, oh yeah, he's automatically at power of like a dragon god, but it's like whatever kind of like abilities he has. Like, imagine it's just kind of like how he gained like shadow abilities, but it's like, oh, whatever gold dragons do, stack like those traits stacked onto his abilities once he enters this mode. And I think that would make a lot of sense, because that would make, if this is just something we haven't had like a full explanation on, but it's like, oh yeah, a dragon slayer, once they've essentially conquered one of these dragons, they gain their abilities if it is in that type. Or if it's a not so exclusive thing, I'm fine with that as well. But if it's a dragon slayer thing that once they get to this point, like say again, Gajeel, like if Gajeel fought 5 metal dragons throughout his lifetime and consumed their metal, and so by the time he reached his peak, he's got 5 different types of dragon metal all combined into his move sets once he enters Dragon Force, or something like that. It might just be, like I said, a Natsu thing, but I think Gajeel holds a really good spot for maybe showing that once we get to an arc that could provide it. So, as of right now, I think the chapter, my rating for the chapter, I will say, was, I think it was a good plus. I liked it. I liked it more than the Gray versus Psy fight, because Gray versus Psy was, it felt similar to Gray versus Hakune, not in like obviously the events that happened, but in like how Gray, like what it feels like for Gray's character coming out of the fight. Because with the end of Hakune's fight, Gray did like a large scale dynamic Devil Slayer like ability. Like it was all movement, large scale in mass, something that obviously he hasn't really done the same thing before. So it's like, oh yeah, maybe he's going to be able to start kind of like honing this ability once they get back. And then, but then when we see in this arc, instead of advancing that, we see him learning a little bit of how Juvia's magic works. So it's like, is he going to take abilities from that and advance it into like whatever his, the future of Gray's abilities is going to be? Or is it going to, are like both of those things like going to combine into something for the future? Because it's weird. It feels like like Mishima was setting up something, and then it's like you advance off that setting. But similar to like when Gray got Ice Make Unlimited, but then it was overtaken by his devil slaying magic, so we never got another Ice Make Unlimited again. So it's like, it makes you wonder, it's like, is he doing that with Gray? But it's like, is he going to do that with Gajeel? But he didn't do anything with Gajeel power-wise here, which I think that's one of the more interesting things about this encounter, because it wasn't done in like a traditional fight kind of setup. It was just Gajeel lost pretty fair and square. It wasn't like he didn't get like straight stomped. His opponent just had a better moveset. He had better abilities to use, and he had a counter for everything Gajeel tried to do. So it's just a straight across the board. He couldn't really do anything in that scenario. His opponent could damage him. Gajeel lost, but it's like I said, it wasn't done in like a regular fight, because there was no back and forth. There was no like Like it wasn't done as a hype tool. It was just done as like this kind of like it was literally like a drive-by. It was like imagine all the characters like on a chart, and it's like they're all progressing down a line, and it's like they all are getting their fights and development when they reach certain points. And then here comes God Serena, and he just jolts right past Gajeel and then just bodies him with his car and just keeps going, and he's like later bye and just passes by. That's all that pretty much happened with them. And I think it's really weird because we don't really have fights like this, because the only other time we've had a similar kind of event was what happened to God Serena, but that was done in obviously more of a hype tool setup, and it was done in information towards how Aknologiev felt towards dragons and the Dragon Slayers. But it was a similar-esque vibe in that sudden just shock action and then out. And we don't have a lot of those. Like usually when a character does something like this, there's a follow-up or a continuation, or another character shows up to help, or something like that. And I think that was very interesting about this. Just it was different. But it was done in just like this kind of like, again, drive-by but a flash setup of something for Gajeel in the future. But then it also kind of set up stuff with Sai, which again I really want to talk about. The Sai stuff holds a lot of potential for the following chapters after we get out of the Dogremag fight. So everything with Kyria also I really liked. That was probably my favorite part of the chapter just to read in general. Like, I liked the stuff about Gajeel, like Panther Lee helping him out. I liked the interactions between them. I thought that was good. And then just there were parts of like we could have done without. I didn't need to see more of the Dogremag or the Dogre crystals destroyed. Just say that they're destroyed. We had the 2 left. Bam, Kyria. And I get it. Like, that's super easy page filler. I'm not mad at it. But we get to Kyria. Very happy about this, because Kyria is a great example of a character that can take a lot of L's and still be a good character. She's been enjoyable pretty much all of 100 Years Quest. The only time that Kyria's done something that I felt just like embarrassed watching her do was when she charged Celine after watching Celine just squash Georg. Like, I feel like she should have just been like, yeah, there's no shot here. Nah, no chance. But it's like she didn't even like flinch. It was like that was the only time she felt like a caricature. She felt just like a caricature of just like this berserker want to fight/attack character. Because there are a lot of times we don't see it. Even like because like we start out, we see that aspect of her, then we see her like sadistic side. We see that she's like a frustrated loser, and then we see stuff like her her affections for Laxus. Even when she's losing, she still wants to fight. So it's like, even some comeback kind of like showing of that caricature. And then love with Laxus, getting humbled by Lucy, and now this. And it's like, we've seen, being the way the respectful dynamic between her and Misaki. Because that was like the thing. It's like funny about Misaki is Misaki did better for Kyria's character than Misaki did for her own character at the moment. Misaki's character, like Mishima, has done relatively nothing with her. Like, she's like the only member of Diablos who doesn't have like something really special about them in their own character way in the story. Like, she just like the only thing really about her you can say is like her mentor relationship with Kyria, but it does more for Kyria than it does for Misaki, which again is just kind of funny. So Kyria's had a lot, and then we see here where she's like, she has one of the last 2 Dogre cores. She destroys it, and she's like, don't think I'm helping you guys out. I'm doing it for Suzaku. He's in my guild. He's one of my friends. I like that a lot because it really sets up a really good display of Diablos. And the thing I like about Diablos, they're not Sabretooth, they're not Raventail, they're not Grimoire Heart. They're not any of these guilds that like you would think they would be compared to as an enemy guild. They're not even Phantom Lord. They're not even Phantom Lord, where they're like they have like a degree of getting along, but they're still scumbag criminals. Diablos is just like this guild that had beef with Fairy Tail because they had clash during a mission. Kind of Kyria's fault, but at the same time, again, I'd be really interested if Mishima would go off that, like if Kyria apologized because the misunderstanding was pretty much her fault entirely. But here in this chapter, like seeing her like again care about Suzaku, and like even to the degree of just like wanting to help them, not like they're besties, but just the degree we saw again was good. She's had a lot of sides to her character that's been shown, and I think that's been super beneficial of this character. That when she showed up, she just seemed like a generic fodder character that like is strong for a bit, found out her weakness, like just she's got hypnosis, so you got to look out for that. And besides that, like she's just kind of this straightforward attacker, not that crazy to beat her if you look out for the hypnosis for most characters like that are relevant now. So when you like once we got past that point, it felt like her character would become like nothing. Like it would just again be like a caricature that would just be used for certain scenes to get beaten. And again, it seemed like that once we saw her again and she lost to Laxus. But then it opened up with, oh yeah, now she's like, she's fallen in love with Laxus. And then we see stuff again like this here, the stuff with Misaki. It's done a lot of good for her character and made her really likable. I've actually really come to like Kiria's character. And it's also one of the, not just the thing about like Gray needing that rematch fight, but one of the reasons I want Madmol and Scullion to have that comeback is because out of the original three, the one that seemed the worst currently is the best one. As much as I like Scullion, if I was gonna put up a genuine opinion of the original three members of Diablos, which one is the best now? It's Kiria. It's not even close. Because Scullion had some cool sides shown to him, but we don't really, we haven't really had anything like that since pretty much the beginning of Drasil. Madmol got really nothing since then. The last time we really got anything for Madmol was like the interaction when we found out like he didn't get motion sickness. I guess you could say like the funny nature of how he sleeps, like he's got the pajamas, because that's a character thing. So it's like if you count that, that's the last time we saw anything, and that was before we even got to Mercephobia. So that was 100 chapters ago. So it's just a funny thing with that. So seeing this here where at the end we do see a part where she's with Lucy and Panel. So I think with her and Lucy, especially like if she can get like some good interaction following with her, then we'll have again her character just gain more stocks and do better as a character. Very nice. I was very pleased with the bits in here, and then also the part with Laxus and Kiria. I'm glad that ship seems like it has some potential, because I know that people like the idea of Mira Jane and Laxus, but there's no chemistry. There's zero chemistry there. There's not been a rebound where like Laxus has been all nice and forgiveful to Mira Jane. There's been some where they just have general dialogue, but the only times where there's been any seeming ship scenarios is on like cover art for chapters. Other than that, there's nothing. There's actually a dynamic here, especially with the way that Kiria, how she seems to only be this way towards Laxus, and then you have like the whole thing about how she wants to cut away. It was about cutting away strength, but like she really likes Laxus's view on himself, and the way that he views everything from his journey, but also how powerful he is in general, like his actual physical power, but his mental way he views himself and how he sees his own weakness. It's done in a really good way that there's a lot of sync between their characters. It's kind of like how if you go back to Elfman and Evergreen before they even had Sirius Island, and if you just find out a little bit about their preferences, you'd realize they actually, like, it seems like they work really well together, because like at the end of the day, it's like this very masculine muscle builder and this like beauty obsessed kind of overly kind of domineering woman. It just kind of seems to be like a way that they kind of relate that I think made a lot of sense. But anyway, back on point. Gajeel, awesome this chapter. Kiria, awesome this chapter. Panther Lily was really good too. I think the only person that was bad in this chapter was Sai, but Sai set himself up for some good stuff next coming chapters, because I'm super hyped for that. So the funny thing about that, one, I don't know why he would use that ability again on himself, on somebody. Don't use the love mod. He should use the weakness bond, because if this guy's in the same guild and there's powerful women in the guild, it's not a good idea to turn somebody in that same guild into a woman, because you don't know exactly where that's going to go. Also, like, what's funny is, like, if that same concept, what if you used it on a gay person? Like, what if you used it on... Could you... Well, that's actually kind of funny. Imagine if he ran into Freed and he used it on Freed, and then Freed turned into Laxus, and and then Laxus just, and then as Laxus he just steamrolled him. I think that'd be pretty funny. It's just like, that's if you get for assuming all the men that you run into are only gonna like women, you homophobe. And it's just like, Sai is like a misogynist and a homophobe, and he's just this character that just keeps getting beat up by the nature of how he just viewed his ability. Even if he isn't actually like that, it's just like, because of his mindset, he would unintentionally come off like that. And it's just like, in the scenarios where it could really fuck him over, anytime that he's messing with a lot of like the guild, it just is kind of funny. It's just kind of funny, the idea of that. It's just like, what if you ran into this scenario? Oh yeah, the known gay guy in the guild, if he was here, he turns into the guy that is absurdly more powerful than him. So like, instead of it being like, you're assuming women are weak, you screw yourself over because you assume this guy is gonna think about a woman, but it's actually a guy, and he's absurdly powerful. So he just gets double karma in the same day. That would be pretty funny. But turning Gajeel into Levi, I don't know if it would work the same way. It's like, because Levi's pregnant, if the damage would transfer to Levi if Gajeel got hurt in Levi's body. I don't think it matters to Gajeel. Gajeel just gets pissed, does solid script iron, and just bashes Sai down and smashes him. The thing about Levi is Levi's got a really good magic, and something like that, I think, just an immediate like rage attack on him, and I think that would make a lot of sense, because even in Levi's body, that kind of trigger, I think, would give you that like adrenaline anger buff. Not like a rage berserker thing, but enough to kind of just trigger that instant pissed off kind of power up, because it's makes a lot of sense, the idea of like putting the body of your pregnant lover and pretty much wife in combat, like, and try like getting ready to try and attack her. Yeah, of course Gajeel's just gonna like trigger switch to want to attack him. Makes a lot of sense. The thing about it though that I'm pleased with, God Serena left. Set up for later, cool stuff. So we'll see how that's gonna go. But that means Sai is defeated, and God Serena's not there to save him. As far as we know, there's nobody else in Gold Owl to help him. So, after the Dogremag fight, they have somebody that can give us information on Gold Owl. So we have somebody that they can just do old-fashioned tie him up, interrogation, question him. We can find out about the Signario sisters, maybe get an actual picture of them. Maybe we'll get something like, kind of like with Irene, for example. He'll mention them, and then we'll flash over to the to their guild hall, and then we'll see them in action, and then maybe we'll see their guild master, and we'll find out something about him. That's something I'm really hoping to see. Maybe he'll give us a little bit. I don't imagine he'll tell them all their abilities, but I'm hoping for one of those things where they have a title that gives us a hint at whatever they specialize at. Since they're not going to be wizards, they're going to be alchemists. I will say, I really like the idea is if God Serena does have alchemy on top of this, because imagine, assuming so, Gajeel goes for round 2. After some form of power-up, some form of increase, training, whatever, him and God Serena are now fighting equal. God Serena, with all his abilities, and Gajeel are just fine. God Serena then starts using alchemy and then Dragon Force, because he's second gen, so his Dragon Force is going to be like Cobra's and Laxus's, where it's going to make you stronger, but it's not even close as the boost as you even get from third gen, where you have both, or because there's obviously different degrees. I was arguing with somebody about this recently that clearly doesn't know how Dragon Force works, and I'll give a quick explanation really fast because I wanted this somewhere before I go into. I'm going to do a full video on it, but I'll just give it really briefly in this video, just really quick. Because obviously it pertains to like the direction of where I think things will go for Gajeel. But real fast, I'll talk about that in just a second. But real fast, the idea of like after he uses second gen Dragon Force alchemy, then Gajeel uses Dragon Force, and that's where he achieves like peak, his full actual version of Dragon Force. Because then you'd also be able to have the Dragon Forces clash, which would be really cool. Because then you can have natural achieved Dragon Force versus artificially achieved Dragon Force clashing, show the superior product, and beat the dude. And on top of that, give him alchemy, because then you could have, oh yeah, he got alchemy and he taught the Signario sisters magic, That would be really cool, because then it's like the top people. Because like we could have, say, a couple more lower people from Gold Owl show up to fight. They only have alchemy, and then we show like maybe the middle people. They have a spell. They each of them have like a utility magic. Maybe they're kind of like the guys who are gonna be like, if we have, say like Lucy fights them, it's not going to be like a big fight for her, a medium difficulty fight for her, like something like that. But then we get to something like the Signario sisters, where they're powerful in magic and alchemy, and then whoever the guild master is. But anyway, just really fast, because I want to have this somewhere, of like the idea, because I said the whole thing about Dragon Force was second gen, so I got to back up what I have to say, because there are going to be some people that don't believe me. The whole thing about Dragon Force is Dragon Force. It's not comparable to something like Super Saiyan or Awakening or I'm trying to think of another power-up form. Bankai. Bankai is closer actually than the other ones, but not the same. The best way to describe it is, think about it like this. Think of Dragon Slayers as Pokemon. As they go, they will eventually progress in their evolution permanently. Eventually, they will get to a point where they will start to become dragon-like in physical body, and they will start to do stuff like grow scales and claws, and eventually they will turn into a full dragon. That is permanent, because the people that have turned into a full dragon that have human forms, that's only a transformation illusion. That's not their physical, actual body. And we know that factually from people like Irene, Acnologia. We know how the process works. So it's a permanent process. Again, think of going from Charmander to Charizard. But when you move over to Dragon Force, think of Dragon Force as a power that says you're not a Pokemon anymore, you're a Digimon, where you advance in your evolution and you are at a much more powerful stage of something that you will eventually achieve naturally. And, it's just a general advancement of all your abilities, makes you stronger across the board. It pretty much just moves you ahead in your evolutionary line. Once you run out of power, you lose those, you go back to base. Think about it like that, you go from suddenly you're freaking War Greymon, and you just drop back down into Koromon. And then after that, you turn back into a Pokemon, but your Pokemon status is always going to be the same, because the dragonification process is permanent. But while you're in Dragon Force, you advance in that scenario only temporary. You don't need to have Dragon Force be stated if you know how it works, especially in the early version of the series, because the chapter was called Dragon Force, but there was no statement, because that was one of the things people would say. It was never said that they had Dragon Force. The first time Natsu got Dragon Force, it was never said. The first time Laxus ever used Dragon Slaying magic, he gained Dragon Scales. Following that, Cobra, who was the second gen Dragon Slayer that we saw, the second of the second gens that we saw, the same thing as Laxus. Once he went from using his general magic to Dragon Slaying magic, he went through the dragonification process, made his arms dragon-like, gained Dragon Slayer abilities. It's a different way of achieving it, but it's the similar process of what the ability does. The only difference is it doesn't give you as much of a boost, because there's second gen, you just seem to be able to achieve Dragon Force easier, but it only does like a chunk up in power. Because like compare any time that a Lacrima person, because like you can compare it to third gen 2, they got more powerful, but compare base Sting in Grand Magic Games to Dragon Force Sting, and then compare that to base Natsu to Tower of Heaven Natsu, where he went from somebody who just went from a full out fight with Gajeel to being able to shit stomp one of the wizard saints. It's a giant jump, much bigger. Because it's like, you look at second gen, makes you stronger, but by a chunk. You look at second gen or third gen, it looks like it may be like it does like a large jump to maybe it makes you a couple times more powerful. Whereas once you get to getting it from an outside source, consuming it to make you stronger, it's something that you're going to be much more powerful, but it's still not comparable to once you get to like actual full Dragon Force, when you get it from like naturally achieving it. As we've seen like Natsu, because like think about it like this. Natsu has Dragon Force, but he has two other powerful forms in between those that are big jumps every time we've ever seen them. Going from base to Flame Dragon mode is a big jump. Going from base to Fire Dragon King mode is a huge jump. So it's like going to Dragon Force. True Dragon Force is a massive spike, and it's a bigger power jump than Lost Aspect, and Lost Aspect is stated several hundred times multiplier in the series. So it's something that Gajeel has shown, because like we saw him get Dragon Force with Bloodman. He got it in the way that Wendy and Natsu got it in their first parts, got it from consuming the devil particles and becoming, pretty much just artificially pushing himself past that limit. Because that's like the Lacrima one, it seems to just kind of like, oh yeah, you now clad yourself, essentially, you clad your magic with this other one, makes you stronger. Whereas like eating it you just consume power until you kind of like shatter through your limit, and then you push yourself into Dragon Force. Whereas the natural one is something you just kind of like can do at will. Gajeel hasn't been able to do that so far. So if we can see true Dragon Force Gajeel versus, second gen with all these different Lacrimas and elements and alchemy, God Serena and Gajeel overcome, I think that'd be great. So this fight has a lot of potential, because like here we got like the whole stuff with Gajeel, like obviously being pissed off of Levy, like the idea of Levy's body, even in a hypothetical scenario, even if the damage didn't go back to her, just the idea of it pissed him off. So if we can, I would love to see Gajeel meet up with God Serena again and have multiple reasons to be pissed off. Be like a fight, kind of like how when Natsu first fought Gajeel and when he beat him, and he did like all the different names of the people that he was beating him up for. It's like, it's not just you trash, you pretty much put trash on Fairy Tail's name in our last fight, because that's how Gajeel sees it. He's like, it's not about me getting trashed, it's about Fairy Tail's name getting trashed in that scenario where you got beaten up. It's also like insulting my iron, because he could take that as an insult towards Metallicana and his dad. And obviously, like, it's going to be like, imagine it's like, oh yeah, it's insulting towards his dad to the dude who's about to be a dad. So he takes it personal. And then it's also like the idea of like when he said like, you're not going to see your woman again. It's like, yeah, and fuck you for even putting that idea in my head. That's not going to happen. And then it's just like that at the end. It's like that last attack and like some really cool like Dragon Force Gajeel panel. Please, Mishima, I need it. Like, Gajeel needs something like that. I think some kind of, like, really cool round out for him. Because the idea 400 Years Quest, if we don't have a continuation after this, I would assume this would be, like, the end of the series. Because Mishima doesn't know if he's going to do anything. He said maybe. But I feel like if we was going to do something else, logically, a next-gen thing would happen. And the next-gen thing would mean, like, there'd be scarce times for, like, a scene like that to happen again. And so, like, setting up Gajeel like this, I think would be perfect for this next arc. Because, like, imagine if that's how Gajeel goes out as, like, the most main character point he's gonna be in. Like, big Dragon God arc, has his own big power-up, personal stakes for an opponent he already lost to once before. Like, all this stuff about, like, how he's progressed through the guild, like, where he's gonna be a dad, the memories of his dad. Like, there's just a lot of stuff all culminating for him. And then that way with Hunt, like if we get the next gen thing, it would be more of like, kind of like when you see Naruto for the most part do something in Boruto, where a lot of it has to do with more of like, let me dust off these gloves and, show off some work. And then any other time it's like, have a dire situation where it's like this character's been used, they can be put in a dire pain and dire status, and we're okay with it. This character's had plenty of spotlight. We got to let the next gen thing happen. Maybe, but who knows? There's a lot of things going forward I'm really hyped for, because with Dogremag now, Dogremag should be at his normal strength. I think it's funny when people say, like, nerf Dogremag, but it's like, no, we were fighting buff Dogremag, because Dogremag is the weakest dragon god. So Dogremag's human form should be weaker than Selene's human form. We all know, because there's more than one of you I would assume that's going to listen. We all know Suzaku is stronger than human form Selene. Selene admitted this. Selene in her dragon form, her actual form, is stronger than Suzaku, but how powerful she is at limited status in her human form, Suzaku is above. So then also is Natsu. So Natsu and Suzaku should be able to steamroll Dogremag, but it's because human form Dogremag, but it's because Dogremag has had all of the Dogre cores scattered about the labyrinth. He was pretty much indestructible. Now, and it made him more powerful. Now, he has all that gone, so he should return to his normal strength. So he should, I would assume, have to go in his dragon form. They said they were going to help Natsu and Suzaku, but now Celine wants him to leave because she wants him to trust them. I'm really hoping that we're going to get some other characters in there. If Mishima really wants to do Natsu and Suzaku, I'm just hoping for like a really cool dynamic fight. I don't want it to be like, because like Alderaan like came to like a really big Natsu culmination. I want it to be huge more on fighting choreography, on like the art, on like cool feats. I want it to be just on like the spectacle, because Dogromag was a sudden character that we didn't have a really much build up because we thought he was dead. We don't have a lot of lore stuff. And then there's a strong potential that he'll die in this arc. Again, I'm hoping he lives, but I want him living to make sense. Like, as long as there's a way that he gets out of there alive and I could see him be like, okay. Like, if they just, like, capture Dogromag and hold him hostage, I'd be like, why? Because the second he gets back to shape, he's just going to be able to break out and leave. So, and it's like, if he's going to try and kill these people, like, Natsu knows that he's going to, at least in the mindset of Natsu right now, he'd have the ideas, I might have to kill this guy because of how he was behaving. Because obviously, if he's going to be like another dragon, like Alderaan, Natsu's going to put him down. Or if he's just like, I wasn't serious, I was just trying to goat you out. Because like Dogromag, we don't really know too much about. It's going to depend. But if he does die in this arc, and it's like an opponent that we're not going to see a ton of, I want it just to be a really cool fight. Because it's kind of like Zero. Zero wasn't a character who we had a lot of knowledge about beforehand. There were only just kind of hints. He'd had little to no lore. Even in the anime where they added stuff for Brain, there was nothing added for Zero. I think there was just kind of like a couple extra scenes of him up and doing stuff, and a couple attacks, I think. But for the most part, you don't get the same. You don't have the same like extension of like what they did with him. So it's like if they do that with Dogromag, I just want Dogromag to be remembered for being fun and cool and like a good fight, because that's what I remember Zero for. Zero wasn't like a deep character, but he was a fun character, and that might be Dogromag's fate if he's not going to be a deep, long-going like character like that. I just want his point in the manga to be memorable and fun. So we'll see. That like their fight holds a lot of potential. Like, obviously, it would be a really good step for Natsu and Suzaku. Like them together is able to overtake the weakest dragon gods. So each of them would be halfway at the bar, which would be good. That would also really give us a good understanding of where like the levels are at. If it's like Natsu and Suzaku both are a chunk stronger than human form Selene, human Dogromag weaker than Selene, but Dragon God Dogromag is just strong enough where he is like almost able to beat essentially imagine two people at human Selene level. Because like they're a chunk above human Selene, but just imagine essentially two people at that level at full power would be able to beat Dragon God Dogromag. I think those things would give us a really good chart of like understanding. Because like if a bunch of other characters show up, that'll be hype, but it will put that spot where like Dogromag's bar is much higher if it requires more than the two of them. Because obviously like more characters is just going to mean a much more large scale spread of where things are going to be going. So yeah, there's a lot of things right now that are going to be fun to see how they finish out. I'm really hoping Dogromag just is treated like if he is going to be like a Zero-S character, that he has a good fun fight that it's one of those also like we know it is, especially getting to the anime where they just hype it up more and more. They instead of said we're not going to give him much more lore, we're just going to beef up the fight even better. I'll take that. Like Dogromag again, he seems really cool. If he lives, he would have to like his. If he lives, though, I want to put this out there. If he lives, his next position should be being the right-hand boss character of Ignia. So then it's like we get to the Ignia arc, Natsu versus Ignia, Suzaku versus Dogromag. Then you can see Suzaku, who couldn't scratch Dogromag before. Well, no, because Dragon Dogromag, I would assume. Unless Dogromag could get a little stronger. Like, imagine human form Dogromag gets up to the point where he can, like, stalemate Suzaku. And then it's like Suzaku has to go Dragon Force and then fight Dogromag. Because, like, the thing about 5th Gen Dragon Force we don't know about is if if they eventually can regain their sanity. Because with Nibiru, we saw that like clearly he was like, it seemed like he was like on drugs, like he was just tripping like on an acid journey or something. Like he just was absolutely out of his mind. But he was turning into a dragon. It was still during the process of turning into a dragon. So it's like, would he, turn into a dragon and then always be like that, or would he eventually kind of just like regain himself? But he's permanently like all in, kind of like that. Because I would assume if he can regain his sanity, he can just do what other dragon slayers at that point can do and learn how to turn back into a humanoid form. Because I assume that's going to be Natsu eventually. But anyway, other than that, like I said, I think this chapter wasn't great, wasn't bad. I give it good plus. I think it was a good plus chapter, maybe a good plus because I think it sets up a lot of good stuff. I think I'll say if it's a chapter that if later we get, say like what I said, like the ideas for Gajeel's rematch and stuff, if those happen, this chapter will become better in a reread. Like essentially, like it'll become better in like backlogging. Pretty much, because it will have a payout. We'll know it has a payout, so it's like, oh yeah, this is a plot point that will hold its value. Because you always have to keep in mind the idea of like, well, what if something set up doesn't happen? Like, what if like that scenario never occurs? Kind of like, obviously, right now the one in the air, Grey vs. Scullion, or in say Eden Zero. The Eden Zero is just one I remember off the top of my head because Mishima didn't do this recently. Because I wanted it. It's not like an Eden Zero like complaint, but I get why he did it. I thought I wanted Jin to get revenge on Mueller, but then he wasn't even there. But I think the way that it was handled, instead of it being like a cool fight for him, but instead it was like a avenue to pretty much get him as a member of the crew. I thought that was something like that, essentially. Like if we're gonna do a scenario like that, I don't really know. We'll see. But anyway, this chapter, solid stuff, good. Again, I'm hoping that the fight goes somewhere and it's not Gajeel wants to challenge God Serena, never happens. But for now, good plus. I like the chapter. I enjoyed what we got. I'm really hoping that we get some cool Psy interrogation after the Dogremag fight, and I'm just really hoping the Dogremag fight goes well. And also, like, what's going to happen with the other Diablos members? Because we don't know where all of them are. The only one there's multiple members that are currently MIA. We do not know where they are right now. So we'll see. Anyway, other than that, comment below. Thumbs up the video, friend the like button, subscribe button. Check out my other videos. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter. And like, what do you think about, like, what do you want out of the Dogremag fight? Because again, Dogremag's in a weird spot where it's like, I don't know if he's gonna stick around. He might die in this fight. Like, what exactly do you guys want out of this match? Because I really want Dogremag, for whatever kind of character he's going to be in, to be really emphasized in it. Like if he's going to be somebody built for later, like say again, like if he loses but doesn't die, like we know that he's going to go to Ignia and that's going to be set up for later. Versus like if he's going to be killed, we know like very clearly that Natsu and Suzaku plan on not letting him go and letting him and killing him, or at least figuring out if he's at least doing something. I want there to be like similar to like when like the Lucy losing her arm following chapter like immediately got to that plot point. I want like stuff like that where it's like I don't want it to be left in the air till we have to wait like longer than we should for something that you should be aware, like you should be informed of immediately, essentially. Because there's those plot points that it's like, yeah, it makes sense, you gotta wait for, but then it's like those ones where it's like I shouldn't have to wait a while, like I shouldn't have to wait weeks and like chapters essentially for two characters to say something to each other if they're standing right next to each other. Like, no. Or something like that. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Thumbs up the video, friend, like button, subscribe, and check out my other videos. But on that, I appreciate everybody's already subscribed, and thank you all for listening. Bye.